Welcome back and thank you for joining A Shark's Perspective. I am Kenneth Shark Kinney, your host and Chief Shark Officer. Let me tell you first about two amazing sponsors who make up this show. Let's talk about Inbound. From marketing to sales and commerce to CX, Invoca's active conversation intelligence platform enables revenue teams to create better buying experiences, drive more leads, and increase revenue. Trusted by top brands like Dish Network, Mayo Clinic, Mutual of Omaha, and ADT, the Invoca team is doing some amazing work in turning conversational data into automated action to enhance digital touchpoints and human interaction. Next, let's talk about Outbound. I hope that you'll take a look at Dreps, the founders of conversational texting, where they use conversational AI to help you reach customers where they're most responsive, and that's on their phones. And working with major brands like 3-Day Blinds, Liberty Mutual, Credit Repair, and Gainsco, Drips is leading the way for some of the biggest brands in the world to improve engagement rates and outcomes for their prospects and customers. On today's show, let's think about this. If you'd gotten frustrated of corporate life, especially with the BS from some big agencies, and you wanted to start your own company or agency and hang out your own shingle, then what could you learn from someone who started their own agency 3 decades plus ago, especially from a woman-owned agency who persevered in a male-dominated world? And how do you do all that while servicing your customer and the customer of your customer, all while you go through the revolving door of CMOs and brands reshuffling the deck so often? Sue Kruskopf is the CEO, founder, and Queen Bee, with 2 E's, of Kruskopf and Company, a.k.a. KC Truth. And she's also the co-founder of MyWonderfulLife.com, a Shark Tank TV show featured site where you can plan your own funeral online. And on this episode, we'll discuss a woman-owned advertising agency lasting 3 decades plus, women in the agency workplace, getting frustrated and ridding the world of BS, the truth of a company, Plan B and planning your own funeral, the Shark Tank experience, grit and perseverance, attracting bees, measuring results, hiring the right talent, staying relevant, doing the bird, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a truth agency teller with a shark who is oh so young at heart on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Sue, thank you so much for joining us today on A Shark's Perspective. Tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
Oh, good to meet you, Kenneth. Well, I'm probably one of the oldest people in advertising.
No.
Oh, come on. I started back in 1988 at the young age of 28 and with a partner and just got frustrated at a big agency and decided we were going to go off and do our own thing and started an agency back then, not having a clue what we were doing, which was probably the best thing. Ignorance is bliss, you know? And so we just weren't making any money at the big agency. So we might as well not make any money at a small agency that we started. And that's what we did. And didn't have a rich uncle or anything like that. Just started doing our own stuff, and brick by brick things got built. To be honest, we probably went out of business maybe 3 times in the following 4 years, but it doesn't kill you, makes you stronger, right? So every time we went out of business, I learned something new that came back and kept me, picked myself up by the bootstraps and kept going.
So why is the company called KC Truth?
Well, just because, I think it's me rebelling against my growing up in a big agency, which I thought was full of BS. And I just thought, that's our mission, to rid the world of BS and find the truth. And the truth is one of the strongest motivators on earth. If you can get at the core of a truth of a company and what they truly are, and not sugar coated or I mean, not sugarcoat, that's not the right word, but it's like finding their essence of what is so true to their soul, that you can weave that into a really great story. And so that's always why we've stood for truth forever. I mean, that's why we have a bar on the first floor called the Truth Bar, because it's just like, we're going to own it, and we're going to own it big. And and that's how we're known in town. People just call us, Truth, or you know, KC Truth. I mean, it's just, that's always been what at the core of who I was, and it just worked. I mean, from then and through the years, it stands the test of time, right? There's a lot of people that keep reinventing themselves, and then every time I think you reinvent yourself, you lose more of your identity, because you're this, now you're this, now you're this. Just stay true to what you are, and that comes in every discipline, whether it's media, strategy, creative. It all comes back to finding the truth in each of those areas. So clients like it. I mean, clients clients, like they come in and we'll have a truth workshop, and it's like therapy. I mean, it's like therapy when they can sit and talk about, hear what other people have to say, and they can all get in alignment with one another, and it's a really, really strong part of a cornerstone of our business. And yeah, we've just owned that forever. And I think that's good.
We're going to dive a lot into the agency life, but back in 1988, I cannot imagine that there were very many women owned agencies at the time anywhere in the country, let alone Minnesota.
Yeah.
And there have been very few that I can imagine have sustained 30 plus years.
Mhm.
Is there anything that you credit that to other than your own perseverance? Was there any special
Yeah.
superpower that you attribute that to?
No, I just think just what you said, grit and perseverance. I mean, I once I got a taste of having my own thing, and I was so sick of. I worked at the time at a big agency in Minneapolis. It was like Campbell Methune. It must have been like 400 or 500 people, and I just got so sick of the politics and the BS. I just I was an art director, and and I worked with a copywriter, and we just get so frustrated with trying to get good ideas out of the agency that we just quit. And and just went, let's just try this on our own. Worst case is we'll build a portfolio and go get a job at Fallon, because Fallon was the hot agency back in the day, and that's where everybody wanted to be. But I mean, Minneapolis was a hotbed back in the 80s, and so that's what keeps you going. You want to be as good as the other guys, right? You want to do that kind of work. You want to do that type of that have that reputation, and that wasn't happening to either of us at the agency we were working at. So that was kind of our plan B, was that we'd get a better portfolio put together and then go get a job at one of those other places if it didn't work out.
So the stagnation where ideas go to die, that exists whether it's agency life, brand, or anything else.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way ever now where your own agency, where you're not nimble enough? I mean, I guess when do you get to that level to where you become too big to succeed?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that was always the old line, right? Like too big to be bad. Nobody ever wanted to get too big to be bad, which we're not at all. But I think that one thing we've learned coming from being creative people, the idea back in the day was you just go cram ideas down your clients' throats and hope that they would buy them. I mean, that was just it. That was your goal. And that's kind of how you were brought up, and account people were enemies. And, it's just this really like obnoxious framework for a company. And that's why we decided we're not going to do that. We're going to like our clients. We're going to work closely with them. We're going to walk down the path together. And that's still the way we are today, just because I just think you attract more bees with honey, and you get better work done if you're all on the same page and you all want to strive for that same kind of work. And now, of course, more than anything, we're held accountable, all the time for results. I always say, it's always art and science, but it used to be more art and now it's more science, so it's always finding that balance of how do you, there's still a magic that comes in a great idea and a great strategy, but you got to prove it all the time, right?
Yeah. Well, I used to always say there's an art to the science, but there's a science to the art. So
Yeah,
that was the way I
right.
would phrase it. But how do you think the creative agency today should be measured? How is it that you measure results without it being all performance driven?
Well, I have to say, I mean, I wouldn't call us a creative agency, because I think that's a really hard model right now, to just be a creative shop. I mean, that's why we have
It's almost an
media.
insult calling somebody artsy.
Yeah, yeah. But we belong to a network of global agencies that we buy all the tools you need, like your toolbox full of measurements and data resources, all that sort of stuff. We buy all those tools collectively together. So we have the tools and resources of an agency much larger than ours. And so that allows us to be held accountable for results of everything that we do. And that's important, because that doesn't, the doors stay open because what we do works and we can prove it. And I think that's the hardest part, because clients today, CMOs last 18 months or whatever it is at a job, in these days, and they have to, their success is our success. So we have to make sure we're constantly delivering. So I think it's a harder challenge these days if you're just a creative shop. I really do, because I just think the CMOs are held too accountable for the success. And so you have to make sure that you have all those things working together, so I think staying relevant and staying ahead of the game is sort of what's kept us, going for so many years, is just staying ahead of the game. It's like there's a fire hose of stuff coming at you all the time, and you got to figure out what the next thing is. So you're always, educating your clients how they can be successful too.
Well, you're not an army of one. Obviously, you've got a good sized team. When you think of how you've hired over the last 30 something years, the
Yeah.
people that support you, how has that really changed when you look back through the types of personalities, the demands that so many of them have? I know for a while, we went through the nap pod phase.
Mhm.
But obviously the talents and skills that come along with it, those have grown, the tool sets, but
Yeah.
the mentality to be a success in marketing is also something that not everybody's equipped with just because they know how to run PPC ads
Right.
or ads on Facebook.
Right. No, I think, well, I would say you learn stuff from growing up. I mean, I think, my dad was an entrepreneur and he always said, hire people smarter than you. And I don't think that's as true today as I hire people that are different than me because they're still smart. I mean, not going to hire anybody that's not, but they have to complement and be different and offer something different than the next person next to them is. So I mean, if we had an agency of people just like me, we'd be out of business. I mean, there's no question about it. So it's just, I think, always hiring people that are different and bring new skill sets and who are really driven to, we call our agency like passionate problem solvers, to try to figure out what the next thing is, so everybody has that mindset to to find the answers for what we need to prove to our clients for sure.
Well, you made a joke earlier about being old, which you're not, but when you think through where your own personality is, especially as a CEO, and I know it's going to be hard to look at this and take a step back,
Mhm.
how do you look for somebody that's different from you?
I think that it's just hiring people with a lot of potential. Like you can see they're smart. You can see that they are curious, about the world. You can see that they want to make a difference, and that's who I am. I mean, I'm not like my skill set is pretty narrow in terms of that I just really think I can recognize good people, and I think they have to be smart, but they have to have a good heart and be wanting to work hard. So I think that's maybe one of the things I do okay at, because we've had quite a bit of longevity with some people at our place. And I treat people how I want to be treated myself. Everything I tried to do was not like the big agency world did it. I wanted to make sure and treat my people better than I'd see them being treated at other places. And so, and just being a woman back in those days, that I mean, my competition was middle-aged white guys, and so I just had to always punch above my weight, and that's still something in our agency today that we always say we have to punch above our weight. We always have to punch above our weight. I mean, you can never rest on your laurels. You just can't. You just got to keep going. And I think that's those are the couple of things that I think I do well. And I really like to dig in and understand how a business works. That's really interesting to me. So it's different than when you're in a creative, or if you're in a big agency and you just get a creative brief and you go off and do it. We're all a part of putting that brief together, because then you really understand the business. And if you understand the business better, you can make the work better.
One of the things I always struggle with agencies, and it's not meant to pick on any of them, but if you're working on the brand side, you're focused on the customer. The agencies suffer somewhat from that because you're removed even further back from that. How does an agency go about better servicing the customer of their customer so that there's more cohesion, if you will? Because that's something that I don't care if you're on the performance side, the creative side, what side it is. At the end of the day, the customer doesn't care if XYZ brand is doing well. They don't care if XYZ is working with Sue. They care if what XYZ and Sue are doing together helps them solve a problem. And I think, unfortunately, so much of that, especially with the big agencies, gets completely lost in servicing the customer of their customer.
Yeah, well, I think we work really hard to understand the audiences that we're talking to, because we always say they're the ones with the money. If you don't convince them, they're the ones with the money. So that's why we use all the tools we have to really understand the mindset of that end user that we want to buy or purchase whatever this product is or service. So I think that that is the thing that a lot of people miss, is really understanding the mindset of what are smaller and smaller audiences now. They're the long tail, they're the smaller audiences that we're trying to reach, because we do a lot of B2B, and you're just not dealing with the masses. But I frankly find it more interesting, because it's harder to sell to the masses and get them to do something than it is if you have a really finite, this is the type of person, it's a chief technology officer, or you have a feeling for who these people are. And in some ways I think that's better and more interesting to me and to us than not that we wouldn't like, big consumer campaign, but I mean, I'm just saying, it's, if you really understand the mindset of that person, it helps you make the message and the strategy better, all the way around, right?
But it also helps that you've not only serviced B2B, but you've also worked on the brand side yourself. And we'll dive into the Shark Tank experience
Yeah.
separately.
Yeah.
But tell us about what the brand was that you started with your co-founder, My Wonderful Life.
Oh, My Wonderful Life. So, well, there's two themes here in my life. Is that, well, one is I always have a plan B. I always have a plan B. If this isn't going to work, I better do something else. That's one thing. The second thing is, in general, when I worked at Campbell Methuen back in the day, I was 28 years old and I was a woman, and I didn't see any women that were past 35 or 40 in the whole agency. And I thought, well, I wonder what happens once you get past that age, because there was plenty of older guys there, but there wasn't any women there. And I went, well, this doesn't look very good. So again, back to my plan B.
What did you find out? Did they just ship them off to a foreign country?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Who the heck knows? That was a lot more drinking and cigarettes going on back then too. You never know what happened. But so my point with My Wonderful Life, since you asked, Kenneth, is that My Wonderful Life is a website where you can plan your own funeral online. And I started that in 2008, when the death of a friend happened. And I just realized, this wasn't that long after, the internet was, I mean, there was just the first iPhone, I remember. But I thought, my goodness, why can't you plan your own funeral online? So I bought the URL from a guy in France, My Wonderful Life, and just decided this was going to be my plan B, because I thought, I'm going to get old in the agency business, but I'll never be old in the funeral business, right? So I thought it's perfect. So we can develop this product that we thought at the agency that we thought was really necessary, right? Because it's not like a lot of agencies, you go out and you develop a beer, a chocolate, or something like that. But this could be a really useful tool, and nobody was doing it. So we did build the brand, build the company, and it's been running now for, well, let's see, 13 years. And we were on Shark Tank in 2012, which was a great experience, because that was the best dog and pony show that you've ever had to do in your life. And so that's my side business. That's my side gig, so that just keeps running. And so when I can get done with my agency and I want to feel like I want to move on, I'll move over to that full time, hopefully, provided it still keeps going well. But I think it's a service that people need. And I feel like it's doing something good and giving back to people, that came out of personal experience.
So let's talk about the Shark Tank experience, one of the greatest shows ever. You as a marketer, how did you prepare for it? I think we're all marketers if we're entrepreneurs, but
right.
With somebody who actually is running an agency, how did you prepare for it?
Well, I have to admit, it was an advantage, because that's kind of what it is all marketing. And I think it's a great idea, and I think it's a great name. mywonderfullife.com is the site. But it was knowing how to put things together, because we had to compete against, there were only 60 slots and we were competing against 10,000 entries or something that year, so you just have to, at least we know how to put a good video together, how to do all those things. So there's definitely advantage to be in marketing. I'm not going to lie, we didn't get any money because we had just started the company and we weren't making any money yet. So it was a good thing to at least but get out there, because back then Shark Tank wasn't as big as it is now. So now it's the gift that keeps on giving. But I just think, yeah, as marketers, you're always have good ideas. And if you believe in good execution, you can make all that work together. And that's what we did. Just if we treated it just like a regular client and entered just like everybody else, and luckily made it to the final round and got on the premiere of the 2012 season.
From a logistics standpoint, how long did it take you to get from pitch to being on the show and when it aired?
It was probably 3 to 6 months. You have to sign your life away with legal stuff. I mean, it's just unbelievable the amount of work. A lot of people get eliminated just because there's a legal issue or something else, so you got to get through all those hoops. But I think it was probably 3 to 6 months. And
And
then
then they still get a percentage of the company, don't they? To
that's
a
no,
certain,
that you have to sign your life away, that they do, but most of them don't even take it and don't care. I mean, and back then you don't even know if you're going to get any money from them or not. So it's only if you get money, they can have the option to do that. But that was back in the early days of Shark Tank. That was almost 10 years ago, so a little different now. But
well, you didn't get an investment. What was the gist of why you didn't get an investment, and what would you do?
because we weren't making any money. It was just an idea at the time. We had ways that we were going to make money, but, at the time we weren't. We just started that company. And so, so we did, but we just said, so what, we'll go do this thing and then we'll get free advertising because that's what it was. And back then there wasn't, people weren't streaming shows. So every time it had a rerun, that's what it was called back then, a rerun, 10 years ago, that we'd see a spike in traffic to our website the minute that there was a rerun of Shark Tank. So
Do you still get a lot of notoriety out of it? I mean, there's this weird thing that comes with being on Shark Tank in the past, and it gets you a lot of notoriety forever.
yeah, well, for a while, yeah. Now there's, in Minneapolis, I was at that time the only person from Minnesota, I think, that had done it. There was one other guy. But people always want to hear about the experience, because everybody always wants to get on it. You wonder what it's like. And is Mr. Wonderful really a jerk, and all that sort of stuff. And it's a big drama show. It has really nothing to do with business. They're all smart business people. But really it's about what makes good TV, for sure. And so there's a lot of tricks they do to throw you off balance and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it was great. I'm so glad we did it. It was super fun. It'll be one of those things that, I got some friends from back then. I haven't talked to some of them now for a while. But, and to see how people fared after that, it was interesting.
You see so much more now, entrepreneurship being discussed across the board. If you were to give advice to the 28-year-old version who's considering starting an agency, what advice would you give them? I mean, I'm sure you're considered a mentor to many, many people. And I'm sure there are a lot of 28-year-olds at your own agency or any agency locally who would love to go start up their own
Well,
thing.
and I have to say, I think it's really hard to start an agency right now, because for a number of reasons. When I started an agency, we didn't even have, the first Mac was just coming out. The very first Mac that looked like a shoebox. We were like, literally, we took sketch pads and markers from Campbell Methuen and went and rented an office. That's all the money you needed. Then the next year computers came out and we bought a Mac, and that was super big deal. That was a really big deal to have that first Mac that was just a word processor. So now I think the difference is, I mean, back then it was super cheap, to start an agency, it really didn't take that much. And it was all about ideas and all that. Now I do think you need to hire really smart people and in multiple disciplines if you want to make it for the long haul. I mean, sitting with an art director and a writer, in an office, starting up a place, good luck with that, because that's going to be a lot harder today, than it was back then. So I would just say today, if I was to talk to a 28-year-old, I'd say make sure you have good backing, make sure you have money, because you're going to burn through it, and make sure you have some good clients already in your pocket. Because I think I could take more of a bigger chance back then, because it wasn't a big financial investment. And I think now it's a big financial investment. I mean, we've seen plenty of agencies come and go. I've seen, in Minneapolis for sure. But I just think it's a big financial commitment to get the people, the tools, the resources, all that stuff you need to really make it happen today versus having markers and a pad of paper and the first Mac, which was such a big deal back in the day. So yeah.
Well, there's just so many people that enjoy being consultants, but even growing something to 30 people when you're
Yeah.
competing, especially against the big five, there's a real advantage to being able to pivot where the big boys and girls can't,
Yeah.
against Publicis and Aegis and everything else. But again, it's like when a small retailer tries to compete against Amazon, Amazon's always going to win on delivery, and that gives them some advantages that can be a pain to keep up with.
Yeah, for sure. No, and that's what I think it is. I think it's really hard to do that today. I mean, I think it's possible, but you have to have a much stronger constitution to be able to suck it up and do what it's going to take to make you a success, I think. So yeah.
And you made a joke earlier about not seeing women over a certain age in the agency. Do you see that being any different today? Do you feel better about the chances of people surviving in the agency life?
I think it's going to come back around. I think as we've tried to, and there's been so much more talk about, inclusion and diversity and all those things. I do think ageism is the next thing to be addressed because I think there's a lot of really smart younger people, but it's like, especially in the pandemic, I think we've missed learning from people that are older, and that how you develop relationships and how you develop, how you hold a meeting, how do those work? I mean, all those things. I was terrible at that when I was in my 20s, and you just think you know everything in your 20s and 30s, and then you realize that old saying, you wish you knew at 40. Or at 40 what you knew at 60. It's true. I mean, I just think there's a lot to learn from people that have a little more sage and wisdom, because I think people don't realize how important trust and relationships are with clients, and how much you have to work at building that, and all those things I think come from life experiences. I think those don't come from just being on social media and all that
Yeah.
other stuff.
Yeah. Amen to that. Well, I still think it's funny though. I always think it interesting when I meet somebody like you who will talk about this, and in the sense that you mentioned your age earlier. And if you left your agency and went to apply somewhere else today
Mhm.
for a role similar to what you're doing now, it's very likely that you would not be considered because of your age, and you'd have all the experience in the world where someone who does not would get the nod and they don't. And I find that to be fascinating as we all get older. It's something that we all have to deal with. I'm really curious where this will all shake out. I don't know if I have the same opinion that it will be addressed in a positive way.
Yeah.
If I wanted to hire somebody to run an agency right now, would they look at somebody who's got 3 to 4 decades of experience in it, or somebody that has 2 years in it?
And I think it's just, you can still be older. You still have to stay really relevant. I think that's the difference, is like, you can still be my age and still be really relevant. I mean, I'm not as good at some stuff, obviously, as people at my office are, but I always want to know what it's about. What does this mean? How does this, I want to be at the cutting edge of everything. And I think that curiosity, if you can be in this business at this age, but you just have to continue to be curious all the time, about things and new things and all that, because that's then it all works together.
So you know well what TikTok is. You just don't necessarily have 1,000 TikTok videos.
Yeah, exactly. I know exactly what it is. But
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
exactly right. But we are doing media, buying TikTok. So, but that's really fun for me to see, because I go, that keeps me, young, is seeing all the new stuff and being able to work in it and see what people are doing. I mean, I think that's really energizing. I just don't know what else. If I said, if I didn't work right now at 64 years old, I'd spend too much money and eat and drink too much. So, it's like, then what's the point of that? Right. I'd rather be working.
Yeah. Well, Sue, I asked this of everybody that's been on my show. I have seen sharks in Minneapolis. I went to the Odyssey Aquarium when I went to the Mall of America last time. But what is your favorite kind of shark, and why? Do you have any kind of shark stories that have ever come up in the agency life or
All
Minnesota
I'm gonna
life?
say are the ones that I met on Shark Tank.
There you go.
So, I mean, those are the sharks that I'll probably remember versus a varietal kind of a shark.
So, well, Sue, it's that special time of the show. Are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked?
Yes, Kenneth.
All right. Number one, Barbara Corcoran or Kevin O'Leary?
Barbara Corcoran.
Why so?
She's just really smart. When you meet her, she's just what she's done in her business is amazing. Kevin O'Leary is kind of a character. I mean, I think she's truly, truly. I mean, he was successful, but I still think Barbara Corcoran has made an amazing career.
Yeah, she's amazing, and especially considering the field she went against in New York.
Yeah,
More than amazing. All right, number two, famous singers from Minnesota, Prince or Bob Dylan?
Oh my God, Prince, hands down,
Thank
hands
you.
down. Okay, because I used to go see him for $1 at First Avenue when I was 18 years old.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was such a diehard Prince fan. Is just
Yeah, I
yeah.
could have asked you Prince or Morris Day, but I think most people
Oh, and
would
I
say
still like
that
the
is.
time. I like
I
Morris Day.
still love Morris Day in the
I love
time. Yeah.
Morris Day. The Bird, just,
Yeah.
that was awesome.
When you want to get some, what do you do? Do the Bird. So I sadly remember that way too much and have seen both of them in concert.
I know.
All right. Number three, Ghost of Christmas Past or Ghost of Christmas Future?
Ghost of Christmas Future for sure.
So that comes a little bit from It's a Wonderful Life phrase. And
I love looking at the future. I don't like people that live in the past are kind of boring.
All right. Number four, Minnesota Twins or Minnesota Vikings?
Not either. I'd probably take the Twins, but they're I don't know. I just am not a sports fan.
Yeah, but a day at the park is not bad.
Not bad. And that's why I'd rather be outside. You couldn't pay me on a beautiful fall afternoon to sit in a stadium inside. That would just make me sense.
All right. Number five, and the most important question you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Okay. I knew you were going to ask that, and I was going to say scone. So I can't answer either one of them. But I'd say biscuit because it's the closest to a scone then.
Okay. Somewhat. All right. So Sue, where do people find out more about you, your company, KC Truth, and more?
kctruth.com. Yeah, that's where they can find out more. Yeah. We're good at simplifying complex problems. That's what we're good at.
Well, Sue, thank you so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
I mean it. I like listening to your show, so we listen.
Very much appreciate it. So there was my conversation with Sue Kruskopf, the CEO, founder, and queen bee of Kruskopf and Company, a.k.a. KC Truth. And she's also the co-founder of MyWonderfulLife.com. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from a conversation with her. First, love her thoughts on starting an agency today. You're tired of working for the man or woman, and you want to go out and hang out your own shingle. Great. Go do it, but be prepared. For those of us who are entrepreneurs or have started an agency, including how well Sue has stood the test of time over 3 decades. Remember that it takes grit and perseverance and lots of financing. Second, when do creative agencies fail? To me, it's often when they're too big to succeed and too big to be nimble. Some too arrogant to understand that they cannot come up with an idea just to make their customer happy beyond the lifespan of the CMO who greenlit those, and those have to answer to their customers and board of directors. But even creative agencies have to be measured. So before you only throw out the agency with the bathwater, dive into why an agency truly failed or succeeded. Just reshuffling the deck really doesn't solve the problem. And the customer doesn't care who your CMO or your agency is anyway. Third, hire smart but hire different. She looks for passionate problem solvers. Find people who are curious about the world. Agency groupthink? Es muy mal. And a rare fourth, don't discount sage and wisdom. Learn from it. As Sue said, and I quote, people don't realize how important trust and relationships are with clients and how much you have to do to work at building that. All those come from life experiences. I think those don't just come from social media. Well said. As you get older, and if you work for a brand or agency, you've got more expertise and likely a higher paycheck, right? Could you get hired again after only a few years at your own job? Younger doesn't mean more relevant unless you give up on being relevant when you get older. Don't discount wisdom on your payroll. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. I'm so thankful to everyone who listens, and thank you to the amazing sponsors Invoca and Drips. Would you please consider writing a review and letting me know your thoughts on the show? And remember, sharks live forever, or at least this one will. So please join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.